Hello, my lovelies. Well, I'm glad to say that Cumbrian Truth actually has come on for part two of telling us about his life story because it was very interesting part one, but you couldn't fit it all in. So part two, we're going to go into the realm of when he was in prison, how prison shaped him, what his views are now, looking back, on things he would change about his experiences, and basically whatever comes up in the next hour. So here's the man himself. Here's Ashley.
Hello, Ant. How we doing? Thanks for having
Hiya,
us back on.
Ashley.
Appreciate it, as always. Yeah,
Oh, well, I thought we got to get this part
yeah.
two done.
It's worth it.
So, what I want to do is I've just said to the people, we've just got on to when we entered last time, it more or less stopped as it was generalized. It didn't actually go into any specific. It was about the care system, but we didn't actually go into the side of it of how
Mm,
prison affected you and how that shaped you as a person. And I say more importantly, as you are now, because there is a significant change
yeah,
in you. I saw that a few months ago. How you suddenly decided this has got to change. So I'll leave the floor to
yeah,
you,
yeah.
and I'll just jump in now and again, Ashley. So, um, start telling us about your
So I
prison
first went
experience.
into prison back in 2016. It was a conspiracy to supply Class A. It was something I'd never ever dealt into. It was something that I've never known. I've always known about selling drugs or selling narcotics, and actually not seeing the prison side of things from being in there. It was more of the lines of I was so naive, I was so young, just thinking about money, 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 and not actually realizing the bigger picture from behind the door. Now, I always remember the day before I got arrested, and it was I went and met one of my mates. He was with his girlfriend, and he was cheating on his girlfriend, and she found out on there at Southwest Services, and he ended up bringing his kids back up to a Premier Inn in Carlisle, and I actually went down and met him. And as I was walking in, Arm Response walked in right behind me, didn't have a clue. And because I sat down in front of a table in front of him in a beer garden where there was children's slides and bits and bobs, I got lifted. I got lifted with him. Now, at the time, I didn't know he had stuff on him. I didn't say nothing. I didn't put his name in or not like that. Literally kept my mouth shut all the way through. So we both got arrested. We were in the cells over a weekend, and then we got took to the magistrate court. And I always remember standing up in court with him, and we were both saying there, "Like, he's keep your mouth shut." I went, "I'll keep my mouth shut. There's no bothering that. There's no issues with that going down the line." So we got remanded to HMP Durham back in 2016. And when I always remember walking up the stairs. Now, when you walk up the stairs into a prison, you don't know what you're going to come at because it's all dead nice. It's well presented. And I always remember sitting down in the waiting room with all these. There must have been about 30 other people. I'm looking around, and I tell you what, Anna, I was nervous. Anyone that goes away for the first time is either nervous or bricking it like. And he said, "You'll be fine. You'll be fine. You're a well strong lad. This is what you're built for." And that's always been in my mind from the past 11 years of being in jail. Is actually known and actually seen what I was truly capable of in there. So when we got finalised with all the paperwork and that, they took us through. They took us through to a corridor, and it was no bigger than a prison cell. And they said, "Go into the cubicle, strip off." You what? Strip off? Yeah. So he said, "Take your top, take your pants, take your socks off, keep your boxers on." Next minute, they put It was like a mirror on the end of a stick, and they said squat. No, no. And it took about 5 to 10 minutes for me to actually do it. But it was the realization of what the f have I got myself into here. And I done that, and I walked through, and you get all your prison issue stuff, and then they feed you on that day. Now it was the old F wing, not before it turned to a different wing with relevant people that shouldn't be named. Um, I always remember walking down, and you can hear people shouting, screaming out the windows, and you're looking around, and that's when the butterflies come in. And I'm with my cordie at the time, and we were right down, and we got onto the wing, and I'm looking around, and I thought, what the heck? What the heck? And they had no spaces for me. As a YO, you're not allowed padded up with a con. So no, you're not allowed, no. And they said there's no spaces, you're gonna have to go on with a con. Now that is illegal in this country. You're not allowed to go on with a con if you're a YO. And they put me in, and I walked in the cell, and I'm looking around, and toothpaste on the walls. It looked like it was riddled with asbestos. And then I went, yes, said my name, and I'm looking at him. I'm like, what the heck? Is he gonna get? Because you hear rumours about jail and what people do in jail. And I'm looking at the lad, and I'm like, oh, what the heck? But he was the nicest man ever. And he said, this is your first time in, innit? And I sat on the chair, and back then you were allowed to smoke rollies. So that's how I started smoking, was in jail. And he made us a cup of tea, made us a coffee, and he went through what happens and how to approach things. And he goes, be yourself, don't lie to no one, and don't get in debt. Now, debt is the biggest riddle in jail. If you get into debt in jail, a number of things can happen to you, from your face getting cut, to getting swelled, to getting done in, to having no money, having it stinking on the wing. It's a horrible feeling. And to actually look from when I was first in, so when I was speaking to this man, to where I actually met him last year on my final year, and you could see the improvement from us. So, so when I was telling him about after I left him on the first time, so I always went down for my dinner with him, even though we got moved cells, because you had to have a month on the wing. On the induction wing, you have from a week to a month to integrate into the prison system. And then he took us down, and you're meant to say your last name and the number of the landing you're on and the door you're on. Now, I struggled with that for a good year, and it was back there that got me. Your number and your name. That's all you got. Your first name is irrelevant in jail. It's your last name. That's all that cares about in the jail. And I'm there with my Cody and my pad mate at the time, and I'm breaking it like, this is me on the wing for the first night, the first day properly out on association, and I'm like, whoa, what the heck? Now my mum and that didn't even know, and my dad didn't even know I was away, so they were showing me about the phone card situation. So they showed me on the phone, and they were like, I remember ringing, no answer, no answer. And it was coming to the end of association, and the screws are giving it bang up, bang up. I went, no, I'm not banging up. I want a phone call. So I stood at the phone, because there was no phones in the cells at this time. And I remember jumping on the phone to my mum. She goes, well, where are you? I said, I'm in Durham. You what? I'm in Durham. She said, what you been done for? I said, nothing. Literally nothing. And then rang me dad. You've been done with heroin, haven't you? You've been done with crack cocaine. I went, how do you know that? It's all round Carlo. And you know what? It was the biggest regret, and actually seeing how my family are, from where they knew me growing up as being a little how a little aggressive person to actually becoming a full-time criminal at the high scale of selling drugs, because it goes on a tier level from like cannabis to class C to class B, straight up to class A. And I always said to my dad, like my dad's always said, I'll give you this one chance. Don't go back to it. Don't do it anything like that, and we'll get on. And he supported us right through the sentence. And even when I got moved from induction wing over to D wing, we were at the time, and I moved in with a lad who knew he's one of my close friends now, Blair. He was in prison now for murder, and when we got padded up with him, well, before I was padded up with him, I got placed in with a Geordie lad, and I didn't like him. And I'm on the top bunk, and he's coming as a UB, started chucking his weight around on, and we ended up fighting. Like, we were just biting chunks out of each other, and that was the first interaction I've ever had with a screw or an officer. Is when they ran in at 11 o'clock at night and put my face fully face down on the floor and started stomping on us and battering him at the same time. Because at that time of the night in the jail system, there's no real cameras on. There's no one on the landings. All they've got to do is open the door, and that's it. There's no body worn cameras back then or nothing like that. So we both got a piercing off the screws for interrupting their Friday night. So me mate come over the next day. I was the one that stayed on the wing. He wanted to move, and my mate come in and looked at all the blood over the walls, and I sat there talking to him about a rollie and a coffee, and he's just looking at my face. My face was all covered in clarity, and I had all the lads on the wing coming down, well known Geordie lads, and a few Scousers, because my codie was Scouser, so, and they're all just coming down asking the story, giving us burn, giving us whatsoever I needed. And from then I started feeling comfortable on my first sentence. So we ended up going to court, and I ended up getting a 2-do-1, a court for the conspiracy to supply class A, and the papers made out to be so over the top. Like reading in the papers with he sell drugs in a kid's playground. I'm like, well, what's a beer garden? You know what? Just because it's got a slide in. So
Well, this is it, Ashley. Just want to say about that the media, because I've I know the media well. I had interaction with them for years in the past when I was working in entertainment. This is what they do, and also they'll always they've got a miraculous way of doing this. You could be the most handsome person on the planet, but
oh
they'll
yeah,
find you looking crap.
yeah.
They'll find a photo of you looking crap or looking sinister, and they'll put it out there. But you know, when you when that first happened, what time period were taking? Are we talking about when you were first put in the cell to when you
Half an
first
hour.
went into the course and got the
Half an hour it
sentence?
took for it to go onto line and branded us in the Daily Mirror, into the Sun
Yeah.
newspaper, to our local papers, and on
Mm,
an internet platform called Cumbrian Crack. Uh, and that was half an hour for it. And then obviously the next
yeah.
day when the papers get published, and we had lads coming down to
Mm,
the doors, to mine and McCordy's doors, and going, "Is that you?" And you got to sit there on and
mm,
explain. Now, Mike Cody went round the full jail
yeah.
while we were in there at the time, and goes, "He never done nothing. He had no money. He had nothing."
Mm,
And that was the respect I got off the lads for not opening my mouth. But the papers can brand you as whatever they want.
yeah.
They don't care. There's that many lies go
Oh,
through
yeah.
newspapers from internet platforms or anything like that to make you look so incredibly dangerous to the public and to others.
Yeah, and you know what gets me as well talking about the internet? Isn't it amazing how many people, and a lot of them have But not a lot of them. Some have been in the papers themselves in a negative way. And if they don't like you, they'll say, "Oh, it must be true. Look what the
Yeah.
press said about you. It must be true. It's the gospel." And it's like, well, if it's true about you, it must be true about what they're saying about them. But it's never
Well,
true about,
in a
when
prison
they're going on
situation as well, on
weird.
where once someone sees paperwork or sees you on the news or in the newspapers, and because they're branding you as
Yeah.
whatsoever, it's quite dangerous.
Mm.
It is very, very, very dangerous. And this is what publishers don't realize. You could get someone stabbed. You could get someone swilled. You could lose your life.
Oh, yeah.
There was a case in Northumberland
Mm.
with a domestic violence case. I won't say the names, and he never done it. He never done it, and he proved it. He proved it so many times that the papers can actually cause so much damage by not seeing the proper court
Mm.
documents to actually reading what's been put in the paper. Now, this lad I know, he's from Bishop Auckland in the northeast, and he was getting hassle from the screws. He was getting hassle from the inmates, and he was on the verge of killing himself. He was slicing his body constantly, and actually to see
Mm.
into the jail system where he was, because when I first met him in Home House, he was in the gym. He was doing everything possible. To actually a year later to see him getting branded this, me and all the old timers in the jail, because once you go in the
Mm.
jail system, man, it's you meet everyone constantly. It's like going to the local community centre. All right, mate, I've seen you for a while. It's a real
Yeah.
cares, and
Mm.
to actually see the damage that people can cause in there by social media or any newspapers or anything like that, it's scary. It is very scary, and that's where people turn to drugs, because if you're getting so down in the jails and you've got no hope in life, or you're feeling shocked or scared, you're going to turn to drugs. Now, I watched this lad
Yeah.
uh, literally kill himself with drugs, and it was so horrible to see from what I seen from the year
Mm.
previous to where he was now. And drugs is it's a horrible.
Well, let's ask you a question about that as well, because I always had my theory about this. Um, when they go on, oh, the drugs in the prison system. Do you think, and to me, it makes sense, Ashley, it does make sense. Do you think they
Yeah.
turn a blind eye to a lot of the drugs because it's keeping the prisoners calm? In other words, it's if they didn't have it, because all that I know as an ex-smoker, if I had been put somewhere when I was smoking and couldn't get a cigarette and it was a stressful situation, I
Oh
would have been
yeah.
clawed on the walls. It would have been. So do you think they actually do it to keep people, the prisoners, calm down? They allow the
Yeah.
drugs to get
It's
in there?
See, I've done 11 year behind the
Mm.
door, literally 11 year behind the door, and drugs in the prison system is high, and the prices for them on it are crazy.
Yeah.
So you look at a sheet of paper, a normal A4 sheet of paper. Now they can spray drugs onto that. It's called spice. Now a blade,
Yeah.
a normal size razor blade is £5, and that I've heard will last you a good night. So a full size
Mm.
a razor blade, I would say an inch, just maybe a bit longer. So you think of the money that's
Mm.
getting made off a razor blade, and
Yeah.
there's Subutex. I've watched people spitting methadone out the mouth into other people's cups and drinking it.
Mm.
I've watched the likes of heroin, crack cocaine.
Yeah. And just people, yeah.
But it depends where you're at. If you're over where you are in Liverpool, it's all your pollen, your green, and if and that's big money. That's hundred
Mm.
pound for a little dab. Is that breaking up?
Yeah.
And
No, it's only
yeah,
10 bucks a day. It's just, I think what it is, it's the desperate when someone's hooked on it, because the way I saw was someone that was hooked on drugs, dragged in, and I forget what they had, but it was in liquid form anyway, and it spilt on the floor. And literally, they didn't care. They went down on the floor and started licking at it. And I thought, good God, to be in that situation where you're that desperate, because he knew he was going to be arrested and he knew he wouldn't be able to get it. And because it smashed on the floor, he knew that was his last chance. And I
Oh
thought,
yeah.
good God, to be in that situation where you're that desperate, you like lick it off. So they'll do it in spitting cups
Oh
or
well,
in
you
anything,
look at
really.
Spice on. I've seen. Well, if you go onto any social media platform and type in Spice challenge, you see people
Mm,
shaving their hairs off, shaving their eyebrows off, jumping in washing machines, fighting with
mm,
officers. You see them fighting with anyone. Spice is the main problem in the prison system,
yeah,
and to actually witness, and I've witnessed this. Officers, I've witnessed the imads. I've witnessed things coming over the fences, and it's all spice and mobile phones. That is the most high demand in the
yeah.
jail. And
But anyway, just clarify something for me because this confused me. Are prisoners allowed to use? w- Well, I know that certain prisoners are allowed to use mobile phones, but what's the rules
you're
on it? Because
not
you
allowed
hear it.
any
Do you
mobile.
remember?
Scottish jails, you're allowed. Remember the old Nokias you could use to get
Yeah,
like the 3310s, that kind of system.
yeah,
Uh, but recently, when I left
yeah.
HMP Lindorm back in 2021 or 2020, it was,
Mm.
they actually brought laptops into the system now, so people can do everything through a laptop. You can't get on the internet, but you can watch stuff.
Because, but I
Mm,
can't understand. Do you remember Sam Walker? He was filmed himself from prison, and I thought, how was he
mm.
doing that? I thought,
No,
I thought
no,
they weren't allowed
you're
to have
not allowed
phones
phones. When I
in
watch
the prison.
Sam and watch what Sam had, there's the little phones you can get people.
Yeah,
It's going to sound crude, this, but stick it up the rear and bring him in like that when they
yeah,
demetal it,
I can
so
get
it
yeah,
gets
yeah.
through all the detectors. You can either get your big
Mm,
smarty phones, so like your smartphones, will either come over the wall or through drones, or they're coming by the officers.
mm,
That's what that is, literally.
yeah. So that was your introduction to your first prison life. How quick was it before you started thinking that maybe this wasn't as scary as you thought it would be, or or did you start
You,
moving into getting used to it and
once
relaxing into
you
the
relax into the
role?
prison system, it's on the lines of you need to get yourself comfortable. Now, if you can get yourself comfortable in any jail whatsoever, from going to the gym to walking around the yard, having conversations, or even speaking to the old timers, like I started speaking to the old timers when I went in, and it was once you can feel comfortable talking to one of the people that's been in for years, from 8, 9, 10 years, you get to feel comfortable. Or like I did on my first sentences, was going in the crowd. Now, if you want to go in the crowd, you're going to end up fighting. Yeah, you're going to be doing jobs in the jail for the hierarchy, we'll call it, and to know your way around. So, as myself, I wanted to make the name in the jail. If I can do it on the outside, I can do it on the inside. So I always remember getting padded up on D wing, and obviously I've had the indication with the fights. And when I got nicked for that, that was my big. This is it. Since segregation. Now I've never witnessed a seg. I've never been down the seg at this point, and actually getting brought through the tunnels in Durham and actually seeing the old where they used to hang people, and going down to the segregation, which is blocked off from everyone. You can't hear in, you can't hear out, and walking onto the wing, and stand there, Douglas. What? Don't look in there, Douglas. And then putting us into a dark, dingy room, and it stank of moist. It was moist. It was decrepit. It was horrible. And I sat in there with a lad who was reading his book, and I said, "Bloody hell, lad, what's this?" He said, "Seg, you'll be getting called in to see the governor." I didn't have a clue. And when it was my time to come in towards the governor, he walked this way, stand against the wall. Anything in your pockets? No. You're going to walk in there, you're going to say your name, and you're going to plead guilty or not guilty. So I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, is this court? So I went in and done that. And the governor, I'm looking at the governor, and I'm looking at someone next to him, and someone on the other side. So there was a CM and an SO and the governor. Read out my charges, and that's when I pled guilty, because I got told off the lads, plead guilty, you get a thing called basic. So you get your telly took off you, you'll get no privileges whatsoever, you stay in your cell, that's it. You're only out 15 minutes, shower, that's it. And a bit of yard. And that's where it hit me, like, basic. Once you're either being put in the block or getting put on basic, you're sitting there thinking constantly, what is going on? This ain't right, this is wrong, this ain't me. And then you've got nothing to lose. Once you're on basic, you've got nothing to lose whatsoever. And this is where a lot of people who brand new to the jail system see people who's on basic for the first time is they've either done something. Now, you see lads in the block, what you in for? I've just sliced lad, or I've just swilled him, or we've taxed him, robbed him, and battered all his mates, or fighting with officers. Now, when I first witnessed someone fighting with an officer, I actually witnessed them peeing in a bucket, doing the number 2 in a bucket, running in the office, which weren't locked, and swilling it with feces. And I'm like, this is just full of animals, and it weren't a nice place. Where Durham jail itself, it's horrible. You have nightmares, and it's like being stuck in your own mind and not knowing what's going to happen. That's that.
Oh yeah. I mean, actually, I was taken into
Mm,
custody once, not prison, custody, and I had to wait in the cell for hours and hours and hours. It felt like hours to me. It must have been about 10 hours at most. And I remember at one point, I just got this. I didn't do it, but I got this urge to shout out. No, something random to shout it out because I could hear other people shouting. And I thought, so that's cabin fever after only 10 hours. So, when you hear about people, not even in
yeah.
solitary confinement, but they're locked in the cell for 23 hours,
Oh, it is.
that
Yeah.
to me is going to send you doolally eventually. It's going to send you strange in the head. Because if I couldn't survive 10 hours or struggled to survive 10 hours, what the hell would it be? I couldn't do it. So that they seem to, I don't know if they're playing mind games, but one thing you said, which is interesting, which they shouldn't be allowed to do, but I know they do it, is this. If you admit to it, guess what? Things will be easy for you. What they're saying is they might as well, it's one step away from
Yeah.
saying, well, we won't torture you. We don't have torture. And saying to someone, when you're going to suffer, you're going to have this taken away from you, you're going to put it in a place. And mental torture
It
is
is. Yeah.
worse than physical torture, as they say. So to me, they should stop that straight away. It must be a human rights issue. It must. But when you got onto that, you got into that system. When just lead us up to the next experiences you started having in prison, and when you got to that point when you thought to yourself, something's got to change here in your
So
life.
leading up, I would say I'll lead up to 2 years ago. Now, a lot of people on here say
Mm.
you've been recalled for YouTube, or you've been sent down for YouTube. And with what I've learned off this platform itself, I actually took that into the prison, and it was a problem for them.
Mm.
Now, when you can spot things like you do on here and take that into account into the real world and into where the system or the authorities are, it's quite hard. So when I got recalled after doing 18 months on YouTube and actually going away, people know you. People know you. People know who you are,
Mm.
what you're about, or anything like that. So I got placed in the first jail I went to was when I left Durham was Diebold. Now I know officers in there from my first time there to where I come back the second time. So how you doing, Douglas? Are you all right, Douglas? And
Mm.
I'm like, why am I here? Why am I in this jail? It's why us. And maybe them to tell me and that no, it's not. I said, look, I wanted to go back to where I was from. Right, so that was HMP Lindholm.
Mm.
So I got pulled by a governor, and he coming down and said, "You are the oldest in the jail, and we want you to show an example." So I'm looking around, and I'm like, "You what?" So you get a jail header, and you don't care about them, and you don't care about
Mm.
who they are or what they do or anything that goes on the wing. And he said to me, "I want you to be an example, and there'll be someone coming into the jail to speak to you about this." So I went coasting. So I went up onto the wing with the lads, and I'm like, bloody hell, why are you here, lad? You look about 40. And I
Mm.
remember them taking us to my cell and people playing loud music. Now, the jail sentences I'd done prior to that were like, you quiet and get on with your time.
Yeah.
So a bunch of lads, the yard, a couple of yardy lads, and a couple of lads from Leeds and a couple of lads from Manchester, I think it was barricading themselves up in a cell, and you're not allowed that where that jail was Diebold. And
Yeah.
the barricaded up, and at the point there's a thing called nationals. Now that is an outside team that will come and deal with any high case in the prison systems. So with my head from
Mm.
YouTube, I'm saying to these nationals, I'm saying to the negotiators, they're saying, right, this. I said, you're keeping us banged up 23 hours a day. No job. You rush us for showers, you rush us for food, you speak to us like crap. And I sat and pleaded with them to where they had to move me round from one side of the wing to the other side of the wing
Yeah.
because I was rattling that full side of the wing up with an argument, and they weren't happy to. So
Mm.
a CM come, which is I can't remember the proper term for them, and he's pulled us at the back of the cell. Keep your mouth shut. You've been warned once. I went, what do you mean? I've been warned once. So they kept us in there. They kept us in there for about 5 hours in a see-through door where it's for self-harm people.
Yeah.
I'm sat there, I'm like, this ain't right, this. This ain't right, this. And so I'm screaming for the governor. I said, I've just spoke to the governor, go and get him. Go and get him. And I'm kicking, I'm screaming at the door. And an old officer come, who I knew, and he was, Mr. Nixon he was called. He won't mind, I've always said about, I'll give him a shout out on the YouTube one day. And he sat us down and talked to us, brought us a cup of tea from my cell. And he said, show an example. Show an example for who you are.
Yeah.
So I went, I will. I will. And that was the day I wanted to change my life from actually leaving
Mm.
prison 18 months ago to going back in to actually seeing him and for him to say, you're getting too old for this, lad. Get yourself a job, get yourself a
Yeah.
lass, get yourself a home, and live your life how you want to live. Because you've been in this prison
Exactly,
system
Ashley.
for 10 years.
Uh,
10 full year, and that was that
Yeah.
and one person.
Yeah. Because How old were you actually when you were actually last out of prison,
So
when you last came
I've been
out?
away from 18.
How old were you?
So from 18,
Hmm.
so I had the year out. I've been out all in all since the age of 18, 18 months to 20 months. When I
But
got
how old were
released
you when you're
was
actually last been in
29,
prison?
29 when I got
You were
released.
29. Yeah, so this is the thing, because that's what shot my head. When I left that remark on your Twitter saying, start looking at this another way, because I thought you're just at the age now where people have to start getting the feet stuck in and making tracks in life,
Yeah,
or it gets too late. It gets too late to do it. And so you started just at the right moment in your life, because once you get into 30, and I keep on saying this to people, once you get into 30, you have really got to have either established your foundations or moving extremely quickly to getting foundations stuck down,
well,
or you're not going to do it. It just won't happen, or rarely it happens. So, because I could see there was a definite change. It wasn't this normal rubbish of people coming on YouTube, ex convicts going on. Oh, I want to talk to the youth. Oh, I want to tell people this, that, and the
yeah,
other. And it's all hot air, and it's just to get views and all this stuff. That's why they're doing it. But there's you're mellow about it. And that's what comes across as different. You're not trying to
yeah,
play others. In other words, oh, look at me. Aren't I great? I'm changing my life around and all this. So now you've got to that point. This is where I'm very interested. What is the message now you would give to your younger self? And this is a difficult one, because it's easy to say, oh, don't do this, don't do that. It's never as easy as that. Really think about it. What advice, or what would have you done
yeah.
differently if you could
So
change it?
if we had to look back at myself from the drug dealing days, I would say it's not worth it. It really ain't worth it. If you is successful in doing it and you don't get caught, well, that's to you. But to people who are under these hierarchies and get cuckooed and are getting used, don't do it. It really ain't worth it. It really ain't worth it whatsoever to lose number of years like I have. Not seeing your family, not seeing your friends, not seeing your loved ones. It ain't worth it. The money, just go out, look for a job. There's always someone out there that'll employ you. But to actually see people in the jail system who are just being used and abused for other people, it's not right. And for the so-called getting recalled for YouTube, I am proud in myself, to be honest, to actually speak out into a hierarchy of prison officers or anything like that, and actually deal with my own issues, from getting counselling, mental health, coming off drugs, from actually building relationships with my family and gaining my friends, and putting myself first for once instead of other people trying to manipulate you. And that's the only way people in jail are, is manipulating you. And that's the only way you'll ever go through in life.
Exactly. That's it. It's standing. That's the thing. It's
Mm,
focusing on your own life and knowing how to do it. But imagine you had, let's say, a son, and he's getting older and he's becoming a teenager, and you start noticing that there's something going awry, and you're thinking, I've got to have a talk to him now and let him know
yeah.
what he's potentially facing. What would you
Well,
say to
if
him?
I had a son and he went down the same path as me, I would give him guidance and say, I've been there, I've done that, and I don't want to go there again. And to actually stay clear
Mm,
of knives, drugs, and people that will get you into trouble. Because I always remember from the care days, my dad saying, you'll either end up two places. You'll either end up in care or you'll end up in prison. And I've ended up in both because I didn't listen.
yeah.
And that,
Time, you can still sort of get into a rut and think, oh my God, I wish I'd done it differently. I wish I'd done it differently. And I'm a great believer. There's no point regretting, acknowledging the past and owning up to the past and saying, maybe I did that wrong. I shouldn't have done it. But the true level is looking to the future and saying, I'm going to the future. And you can feel if you've
oh
done
yeah.
anything, you regret it. Worrying about it, I'd say it's that because I think people should have a conscience. People having a conscience and feeling bad about something and feeling remorse, especially if they can't put it right, is a good thing. But if it keeps them stuck where they are, it's a bad thing. Where it should propel them forward and say, well, this isn't going to happen again. So now when you're talking about these kids and you were told to give them a message, have you got any plans to start actually getting this message across
Well,
and how
it's
would you
quite
do
hard
that?
for myself at the minute because with what I'm getting done with online, I've started putting bits out about my story and putting it out there because I went from being in the care system to being in high flying with drug dealing in my town to actually living 11 years in jail to becoming a voice online, a voice in my local councils, getting targeted by the probation service, targeted by police. That's all this here. It's not worth it whatsoever. You could live a life of crime and you could think you are so high, but it only takes one person to stop that. One person. And I've been close on it numerous of times. It all gone in seconds. Seconds. But my message out there to people is just think before you do it. Just think before you do it.
See, that's it. It's thinking, and also, and this is a hard one to get through. But I know someone who actually did it, and he was worried about his kids. Had two kids, and he was worried. So I just said one day, because more or less the area he
Mm,
was in and the influences that they were facing the kids. So I said to him, I said, but I really said, what's the situation? I said, you either run your risk that your kids are going to be okay and not get involved in this, but I said they'll have to be
yeah,
separate from the peers, which isn't going to work anyway. Or said, you have to make a decision. I'm going to get a move and go somewhere where it's not
yeah.
as severe, the bad influence. And he went and did it. He actually did it. He said, right, he said, we're going. He found somewhere else, a better place. And he moved everyone because said because he'd gone through a period himself where he was in prison, and I remember he used to always say, and the look on his face actually when he'd say, it, he said, "I can't believe." He said, "I wasted so much of my life." He said, "What I could have done." And he would look. He
Yeah.
wouldn't even look at me when he was saying that. He'd be looking up here somewhere. And I used to think, God, he is well angry with himself.
It's there's another issue. It's when you come out of jail. Now this is my biggest, strongest. It winds me, and I would love to speak out on a high platform and speak outside with councils and all this. It's help, help when you come out of jail. I've come out 4 times and you don't get nothing from probation. You don't get nothing from the local councils apart from declare yourself homeless. You don't get no help. All you got is go and sign on the job centre. You don't get help with CVs. You don't get help with nothing. It's I've watched so many good people come out of jail so positive and high and want to go forward in life to actually come back into the jail system saying, I've just been set up to fail. And that is one of the, if you speak to anyone in jail or anyone who's been in the jail system, set up to fail by the probation service is the most horrendous thing ever. There should be more people housed for coming out or halfway houses, not hostels, halfway houses. There should be a grant to help them look into work or travel to work. and there should be help with food and living.
There used to be, I remember years ago, there was a younger woman, and she had a tag on her leg. And she used to actually work for a company. And she said this company had a policy, they take so many people who would just come out of prison. And it wasn't like they were paying them cheap wages either. It wasn't like, oh, we'll get cheap labor here, which I'm dead against all this cheap labor thing. But she had a tag on, and she said, "Oh yeah," she said, "I go round," and she said, "That's what keeps me out of the system." And she said, "Also," she said, "I
Mm.
know I've got to go to work in the morning, so she said I can't
Oh,
go taking any stuff." She said because they'll know whether I've been using anything, and she said they wouldn't sack me, but she said they would,
yeah,
take me to task over it. So they could have things like that. I mean, they can have it, and you're right. It's just like get there, get out, and just start again. And you think, well, and relocation. This is another thing, Ashley. What do you think about this? If someone, the situation is like they're in a situation where the people that are around influence them too much. I hate saying bad influence because that's pushing the blame, isn't it? So, you
yeah.
know, they're going to influence them anyway. Do you think they should be that the probation service or whatever service can be set up should say, well, are you willing to relocate and we'll relocate you away? Or
Now,
would you think that would cause
I'll
problems
tell
if
you a
they've got
little
family
story
members?
about this. So, 2 to 3 years ago now, I asked to get relocated. I thought there's going to be too much trouble in Carlisle.
Mm,
Now, most councils say you needed a connection to to move on. So you need a family member or you need to be known to that area. Now, when I was trying to
yeah,
do that, they wouldn't help us. So I sat in the council building
mm,
for a full week, not moved from the date up until the date shot. It's even on a live. And there was a, this is how tricky this got. There's a man coming. Now, there was a murder with a gas leak with one of the butters I was
mm,
trying to get to. I was sat in a live and I said, come tell me your story, lad. And I made the point for them to hear. So once
mm,
he told his story and said it's on an online platform, they rang me up. We're going to sue you. So I'm like, what you going to sue me for? I've literally just come out of jail. I haven't got a pot to be in.
yeah,
Oh, we'll help you get a house. And they never stuck to it, and all they wanted was me to take that video down. The
yeah,
councils so
mm,
horrendous, and the probation as well is so horrendous to get help. But it's on the lines of
yeah,
they want you to do it yourself. Now I know people that are mentally unstable, can't get the support. You've got people that
mm,
take a numerous amount of drugs and prefer to live on the street because they can't get a house. And it's like a never ending circle because you go in, you come out, you're either on drugs, on drink, and you're back in to square one. And
yeah.
it's how it is.
Oh, I used to people used to come into the stations, Ashley, and they'd turn around, they'd be desperate, they didn't have any money or anything. They'd say, look, said, I'm going to tell you now. I'm going to tell you, said, I don't want to, but I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have
Yes.
to thieve or something because I can't eat. I can't, and there was nowhere, absolutely nowhere you could point them to. And I used to get really wound up by this. And the used to, another one was women coming out of prison or women
Yeah.
that were escaping domestic issues, and they'd have kids. And you try and try and try and try to get them a place. I always say we've got places in Liverpool, these refuge places and all that. Do you know what? I got fed up with how many times. Oh,
Mm,
no, we can't. And they'd be told, go to Whitechapel Street in the morning. And he used to feel terrible because they'd have to, they'd be outside. If they had kids, I used to
yeah.
just say, "Stay in the station." If it was a 24-hour station, stay in here. But, there's nothing. And so as you say, that's right. Some people you're not going to be able to help. Let's face it, some people, but you can tell the probation will be able to say this person isn't going to be able to be helped because they're just too entrenched or they'll abuse the system. So as long as the person's reaching out and shown that they're willing to, you should try to help them. That's it, because it benefits society. Because how much is it a week to keep
It's
someone in
it
prison?
works out at 44 grand a year. So
And yet, if you got them a small flat
mm,
somewhere, not a grubby, dingy place, a small flat somewhere, you're
it,
talking the money you'd save would be huge on it. And they've known this for decades, decades. But you're right what you're saying.
yeah, I'll just rely on to what you just said there as well with the women's situation. Now,
Yeah,
I've spoke to women who's been to jail who went in pregnant and done a number of years and got the
yeah,
kid took off her and never seen them again. Now,
yeah,
social services should help
yeah,
reconnect with families that who women that went into prison to actually come out should have that rekindle with their children, and that's another
yeah.
thing that needs to be looked at.
S- See, that's it. I've always said about social services. I mean, it's an awkward situation, of connecting to, because if the child hasn't seen the parent, let's say for a number of years, that's a difficult one, and will it
Mm,
stress the kid out seeing them? But what I'm dead against, and always have been,
yeah,
this forced adoption
no,
thing. I've got no time for. In my mind, and children also. This is nothing that happened actually, which is shocking. Children can turn around and say, "No, I don't want to see me parents." Now, whether they
mm,
hate the parent or not, if they're going to see them once a month for 2 hours, you should say to that child, "Look, you just be. If you don't want to talk to them, don't talk to them. We'll be here sitting with you,
yeah,
and just ignore them. Nothing's going to happen to you, but you've got to sit there." Because I'm convinced that there's cases that happen where parents are told you can't see your kids on a visit,
that's-
and the kid hasn't said that at all. It's just that it's convenient for them. If the child gets upset because they go on a visit and the parent's going to leave, you
yeah,
just have
yeah,
to. It's
yeah,
good to be upset as a
yeah,
child and learn how to cope with it. That's it. But yeah, I've always thought that it's absolutely there should be some connection there. But I understand that if a child hasn't seen the parent for many years and say the
yeah,
parent is quite a horror case, you'd be like, "Oh, what do we do here?" Because it hasn't been a continuous flow. Saying that's your mummy or daddy, and
yeah.
the kid's like, "What?"
It,
That's
it's
who
more from
I'm
government.
related
Government
to.
need to sort this out because you're overcrowded. It's like with recall prisoners. I said this just quick before recall prisoners. You're recalling them for petty things and filling your jails. That's it, when they say they're letting people out early. Well, stop filling them with recall prisoners because it worked out as 60% of people in the jail system are recall prisoners, and
That's what they do. Oh,
which one?
have you read about that fella? Got out of prison and murdered
Yes,
the same
yes,
day.
yes. And I'll put this out. I've seen it recently where there's sex offenders coming out of jail and doing the same crimes over and over again. Now that they should be up there with murderers. They should be up there with GBHs and actually not getting 6 month, not getting 4 month, not getting 2 month, and actually should be up there with horrific crimes because
Well, this thing actually that they're not going to do that because I'm convinced, and I've said this for years. There's something in the system that is trying to
mm,
normalize that kind of conduct with children. And when you've got people not being deported because they might get treated
no,
badly where they come
no,
from, it's like, well, something's gone awry, but there's definitely it's been for years. There's definitely been a move that um something in the system, the
mm,
judiciary, the judiciary, definitely there's something there where they're not finding
well,
it
it
a
is.
serious crime. which is
But
very worrying, but that's how it goes.
thank
But
you.
anyway, Ashley, it's been great
See you on the
talking to you
next one.
again. So we'll definitely be on the next one. And to let people know, I'll be talking. It'll be around about the 10th to a very, very interesting
Oh yeah.
woman, Raji Naresh Singh, who is wonderful. People who don't know her, she's been on botched and all that. Many years ago, she had
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
fillers, illegal fillers put in her face, trans woman, and it went horrifically wrong. And she literally became a sensation. I've interviewed her before, so
Yeah.
I'll be interviewing her again.
I will
Lovely
definitely
woman. You'll have
100%.
to tune in, Ashley. Absolutely beautiful woman. Definitely a soul to learn from as well, because she just got right over one of the most horrific situations and still smiled and still laughs and brings joy to people, which is amazing. So thanks for that, Ashley. And so to everyone, I'll speak to you soon. So let's see here. And so goodbye, me